Hey everyone, welcome to the channel for another Escape from Tarkov video. In this one, I'm taking a look at some more barter trades, but this time I'll be focusing specifically on attachments and equipment like ammo and grenades. Normally, the barter trades people focus on are for weapons and armor, but there's a decent selection of useful trades for attachments that are either great to add to your loadout or useful in the Gunsmith questline. These trades can help you avoid super marked up flea market prices for the Gunsmith quests, which is definitely helpful in the early game. I'm going to go through the list that I've created for each trader and cover the most useful attachments and equipment they have available for trade. So with that intro out of the way, let's start this off by taking a look at Proper. Starting at level 1, Proper has a few decently useful barter trades, beginning with the PSO scope, which can be traded for 2 spark plugs, a fairly common drop on reserve and interchange in toolboxes. This scope is pretty useful in the early game, and this is a pretty easy way to get it. At level 1, Proper also has a few useful ammo trades, starting with 30 rounds of BT ammo in exchange for 2 cans of beef stew. He also trades 30 rounds of BP ammo for 1 bottle of Clin Wiper. These trades aren't exactly ideal later in the game, but when you're low level, this can be a decent or possibly your only way to grab some ammo. Next up at level 2 Proper, there's a very useful trade for a 60 round 545 AK magazine in exchange for 2 hard drives. These are very common to find in computers, and this is a great way to get extended mags for mid-game runs. Another trade that I make very often at Proper level 2 is the RGD5 grenade in exchange for 1 ES lamp, which is also a very common drop and really the only viable way to get grenades for cheap in the early game. Moving up to Proper level 3, we have a great trade for a 30 round VSS mag for 4 pairs of red pliers, which are pretty common and cheap, and this is one of the better ways to get this magazine. You can also make a pretty decent ammo trade here at level 3, getting 30 BS rounds in exchange for 2 cans of Hot Rod energy drink. You can craft these 10 at a time in the nutrition station, and this is a great way to stock up on some BS ammo. Next up, we'll look at Mechanic's barter trades, and he definitely has the biggest variety and some of the most useful trades in this category. First up at level 1, you can get the MP133 custom pump for 2 hard drives. This part is needed for an early Gunsmith quest, and this is the best way to get it as a low level player. He also has another part needed for an early Gunsmith quest, the B11 AK-74 U handguard in exchange for 1 green battery and 2 D batteries. This isn't a great value for the item, but you do need this for a quest early, and this lets you get it. The last trade at level 1 that I really like is the VOG 17 grenade in exchange for 1 grenade fuse. These are pretty common to find in grenade boxes, and this is an easy trade that lets you get a very powerful grenade at a low level. Moving up to Mechanic level 2, he has quite a few useful attachment trades, many of which are needed for Gunsmith quests. A lot of these are fairly new trades and seem to be added specifically so people could avoid getting ripped off on the market while doing the Gunsmith quests. First up, you can get the Hybrid 46 suppressor for 1 T-plug and 4 pieces of RAM, which is kind of expensive, but if you find these items in raid, it's a good way to get it for the Gunsmith quest line. Next up, you can get the M14 Ultimac rail in exchange for 3 circuit boards, which is needed for a Gunsmith quest and is often very expensive on the flea market, so this is a good way to get it for cheaper. Mechanic level 2 also has 2 parts needed for the M870 shotgun for the Gunsmith quest line. First, the MOE 870 pump in exchange for 1 rechargeable battery. You can also get the SGA 870 stock in exchange for 2 AA batteries and 2 D batteries. Both of these are needed for the Gunsmith quest, so these are pretty useful trades. Next up, we have the 260mm AR-15 barrel, which you can trade for 2 Apollon and 4 Marlboro cigarettes. This is needed for a Gunsmith quest as well, and in the early game, it's very expensive on the market because of this. You can get the GL shock stock for 2 power supply units at Mechanic level 2, which is also used in a Gunsmith quest. This is kind of expensive for the trade, but again, it's often cheaper than the flea market price early in the wipe. You can also trade 1 power supply unit for an MP5 50 round mag, which is used in a Gunsmith quest, but also is just a useful part if you like to run the MP5, since the mag is sometimes pretty expensive on the market. Next up is a 34mm mount for scopes in exchange for 2 DVD drives, which again is used in a Gunsmith quest and has a jacked up flea market price early in the wipe. The last Gunsmith part you can trade for here is the FLIR thermal scope for 2 Iridium, 2 MGT, and 5 MCB, which is very expensive, but it's also needed for a late game quest. Finally, the last part that I like to trade for at Mechanic level 2 is the Osprey 9 suppressor, which you can trade for 1 drill. This is the best in slot 9mm suppressor, and this trade lets you get it for cheap so you can use it on MPX and MP5 builds. At level 3, Mechanic has way fewer trades for attachments, but he does have a lot for weapons. There's still a few decent ones here though, starting with another trade for the MP5 50 round mag for 4 wires. This one is pretty good, and you can craft these wires in the hideout. Next up, he'll trade you a Rotor 7.62 AK suppressor for 2 magnets, which is quite a cheap trade most of the time and gets you a suppressor for your AKM or AK-103. Moving into level 4 Mechanic, he has a number of great barter trades here, especially for extended mags for top tier weapons. First up, you can get an M1A 50 round mag for 1 GM counter, which is a super cheap trade and lets you get a big mag for the M1A quite easily. Mechanic level 4 also has a great barter for 50 round FAL mags, which trades for just a single G-phone and again is a cheap and easy way to get an extended mag for the SA58. He has one more drum mag trade as well, the Saiga 20 round drum in exchange for 4 red pliers, which is generally much cheaper than the flea market price for this thing and can let you do some fun, cheap Saiga runs. Finally, the last attachment trade I use at Mechanic level 4 is the Reaper Thermal Scope, which is needed for a few different quests. You can trade this for 4 Iridium, 8 MCB, and 1 military filter. This is a very pricey trade, but then again, the scope is also super expensive on the market, so either way, it's going to cost you a lot. Next up, we move over to Peacekeeper. He doesn't have a ton of different attachment trades, but the ones he does have are all pretty useful in my opinion. First up, starting at level 2, you can trade weapon parts and a can of WD-40 for a UTG scope mount for the M1A. This you can use for a Gunsmith quest and also just use as a mount for any M1A you find early game. At level 3, you can get both of the extended 5.56 mags for pretty good trades, starting with 1 gas mask filter for a 60 round PMag drum, which is a pretty reliable way to get this mag. You can even craft the filters in your hideout in the lavatory. You can also get the 60 round Stanag magazine for 2 circuit boards, which are pretty common to find and often cheap on the market, so again, it's a good way to get an extended M4 mag. The last one that I like at this level is the trade for GPNVG Night Vision in exchange for 9 level 25 bear dog tags. This is a pretty specific dog tag trade, but I just like to save all of my bear dog tags for this trade as a good way to get the good NVGs. Next up, we'll take a look at Skier's attachment trades, which are pretty limited, but specifically I think the skeletonized pistol grip trade for 3 chainlets and 1 vase is a useful one to know about. This is kind of expensive for the part, but it's needed for a Gunsmith quest, and this thing was selling for insane prices earlier this wipe, so save yourself some cash and just use this trade. Skier also has a trade for the Reaper scope at level 4 in exchange for 4 clocks, 4 rollers, and 4 skull rings. Quite expensive, but it might be useful when you need the scope for late game quests. The last trader I'll be going over is Jaeger, who like Skier doesn't have many attachment trades, but there's a few that are worth looking at. First up, at level 1 you can get the Dovetail SKS mount for 2 packs of matches, which is a pretty cheap trade to get a sight mount onto any Dovetail SKS rifle you get in the early game. Next up, at level 2 you can get the ATAC-R sniper scope in exchange for a power bank, 2 magnets, and a UV lamp. This scope is needed for a Gunsmith quest, and early in the wipe it's very expensive, so this can be a good way to get it for cheaper. You can also trade for a 34mm mount to use with this scope for the Gunsmith quest in exchange for 1 propane tank. Again, this is just a good way to get the part early for the Gunsmith quest line. At level 3 Jaeger, you can trade 3 lunchboxes for the Brommet silencer for the Mosin, which is a decent way to get this suppressor at a slight discount. You can also get the Flea thermal scope at level 3 Jaeger for 8 sugars and 5 Aquamarine bottles, which is pretty damn expensive but can be useful to get the scope for a Gunsmith build. Finally, at level 4 Jaeger, you can make a trade for the Reaper thermal scope in exchange for 14 helix coils and 10 chimney cleaners. It's a lot of items for the trade, but this is one of the better ways to get the Reaper scope for the test drive quest from Proper. Well, that pretty much covers all of the attachments and equipment trades that I wanted to go over in this video. Inevitably, more trades will be added and some of these will change, so stay tuned to the channel in the future and I'll try and keep this kind of stuff up to date. A lot of these trades are most useful for the Gunsmith quest line, but several of them are useful for normal builds as well, and it's good to know what you can use some of the random loot items for when you find them. I'll be streaming more Escape from Tarkov on Twitch, and I've got links to my Twitch stream, Discord server, and Patreon page down below for anyone interested. Thanks for checking out the video, let me know what you think down in the comments, and until next time, stay safe in Tarkov City.